Hello, YouTubers. Joe Kersey here on Sunday, March 29th, 2015, Palm Sunday at 15:20 in the afternoon, Eastern Daylight Time. Now, for those of you who follow me, you have a pretty good idea I went to church this morning. And for those of you who really follow me, I read the narrator's part in the Passion Gospel according to Mark, which we did in two parts this year. We did Mark 14, 1 to 16 at the normal gospel time, and then after the final hymn and the blessing, then we read the remainder of Mark's Passion Gospel. And of course, people in the congregation take different parts, and of course, you have the narrating of Jesus, and then you have, like the centurion and the servant girl and the crowd and the members of the council, and basically anybody who makes an appearance. You have Peter, and Judas actually has a line, and it's it can be very intense. It can be a very it's very intense for the narrator. Now, it's very intense for Jesus. Now, Roseanne, our rector, did the Jesus part, which is very appropriate, I think. I think it's far better to have one of the clergy do the Jesus part than one of the lay people. And it went, it went off flawlessly. And that's not me patting myself on the back. I mean, everybody on the platform, in the nave, nobody muffed a line. Nobody missed a cue. Pretty much everybody who spoke with true feeling. This is the 20th year I've been going to St. Peter's, and I started on Palm Sunday, 1995, and I've now been around 20 of these things, and some of these things are real, so I just phones it in, and then of course, then you have some where like not our previous rector, but our rector before him. He sort of tried to go for the deliberately bizarre. Well, he had a theater degree. His PhD was in theater. And he'd choose the most oddball people for the most, inappropriate parts. For example, like today, we had a retired common pleas court judge doing Pilate. You can't, how much more appropriate can you get? Have a judge doing Pilate. So it went very, very well. And now my judge buddy was up there too. He did one of the wines, and Roseanne handed the other wine goblet to me, and this 17, 18-year-old guy that reads and does the wine at the 8 o'clock service was up there, and I sort of looked over at him. I said, "I thought you were supposed to do it." And he said, "Do you want me to do it?" I said, "Yeah, please," because that gave me a chance to sit down and get myself into the proper state of mind. Plus, it's only right that he does it. I mean, he does that. And he'd been the number one reader. He had read the Old Testament lesson and done the prayers. So, I mean, rightfully, he should have done the one. So, good. So it went very well. Of course, we started out in the parking lot, and it was 15 degrees. Now, at least there wasn't much of a wind. And what little bit of wind there was from the south. Unlike yesterday, where it was, 15 degrees with a 40-mile-an-hour wind from the north. So that tended to move along, actually, a little bit more rapidly than what Roseanne would have liked. She kept saying, slow down, when we were processing around to go into the front of the church. Slow down. No, people were on the move. It was cold out. They wanted to get into the church. And we sang this new version of All Glory, Laud, and Honor. It wasn't a different tune, but instead of doing the refrains, they just sang all of the subsequent verses to the refrain tune. It's very odd. I mean, it worked. It was okay. Once you caught on, I didn't catch on right away. I mean, I started singing. I started launching right into the refrain, right over top of the second verse. Before I caught myself after about the first sentence. Well, I guess there was a mistake. Well, that's not the kind of mistake I'm talking about. I was talking about in the actual gospel narrative. Gospel. Now, I woke up this morning at 5, and of course, as is my wont, I check my email immediately if I wake up. And there was a message from my judge buddy that he had sent me around 8:45, 8:40 last night, the previous night, in the evening. Of course, I had been abed. I had been abed for about a half hour at that point. Wanting to get the best night's rest I could for this little endeavor today, and he was talking about this one line in the NRSV version, and it comes at the end of the Passion narrative, where the centurion is at the foot of the cross, and in the authorized version, the real version, if you will, the centurion says, and this is verse 39 of chapter 15 in Mark, and when the centurion, which stood over against him, saw that he so cried out and gave up the ghost, he said, truly, this man was the Son of God. That line also appears pretty much identically in Matthew. But in the NRSV version, it says, truly, this man was God's Son. Now, yes, that sort of has the same meaning, but it's not quite the same meaning, and it certainly doesn't have the import, and it doesn't sound as nice. It's an uglier way to say something. I actually think that some of these people that worked on that committee must have learned English as a second language, and there's nothing wrong with learning English as a second language. I encourage people that can't speak English to learn English as a second language. Lord knows I have no talent with learning second languages, but to speak them. But, there's just something about having grown up with the language that lets you appreciate whether it sounds really pleasant or beautiful, or is just sort of like a committee meeting statement. And a lot of these newer versions, some are translations. The NRSV is a translation. But some of these newer versions read like committee meeting minutes. Or hell, not even minutes, just like some random jottings somebody's put down in their notebook or iPad or whatever the hell they use nowadays at meetings. But it went well, and then, unlike a lot of single services where the 8 o'clock people and the 10:30 people come together, the 8 o'clock people actually stayed around for the little socializing time afterwards. And even with the socializing time, we were basically out of there about 11:35. I mean, it seemed a little longer than that, but talk about a fast Palm Sunday service. Because the service didn't go. The service actually didn't go much longer than an hour and a half, which is pretty much what most services go anyway. I mean, most normal services without the long gospel reading will go maybe an hour and 50 minutes, hour 45 minutes. So, even with milling about in the cold and marching in it took actually less time. Well, Roseanne didn't give all that long a sermon, and she says, "I'm not gonna give a long sermon today because we got a long gospel reading." It was interesting. She said, on the way out to the cold parking lot, she turned and she said to me, she says, I really should have called this off, and we should have started inside. She says, but I thought momentum had gotten the better, the upper hand. She says, this is just a result of me being new still. And that's true. It wasn't any big deal. I mean, the people that didn't want to go out in the cold stayed in the nave, and the ones that thought we'd tough it out and do it the traditional way, we went outside. So that was a good day, and home safe by the grace of God, and yeah. Now, it turned out I got home. Paul wasn't home because he was going to have the day off, but they called him in to work at 9 o'clock this morning, which occasionally happens, but not too often. So I guess he's still at work. If he works a full 8-hour day, he won't be home till around maybe 6 o'clock. So we'll see. So I guess I'm just going to say bye-bye, YouTubers. It's been a great day. All right. Bye-bye.